Welcome to the Relocated South African, the show for navigating immigration from South Africa for a better future. I'm your host, Jan Hugo from Lagos in Portugal. Check out our website, www.therelocatedSouthAfrican.com. It contains a whole lot of useful information and details of all episodes to date. If you want to interact with us or comment on our discussions or participate in an interview, please contact me on jan@therelocatedSouthAfrican.com. And if you like our content, why not subscribe on your favorite platform? It's my great pleasure tonight to welcome from Dublin in Ireland, Lumondt Kritzinger, the founder of HowzitExpats.com. Welcome, Lumondt.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Great to have you. Maybe just to start with, please, can you just give us a little bit of your history of your immigration journey? Where did you grow up, go to school, study, and how did you get to immigrate?
Yes, I grew up in Port Elizabeth in the good old days. Studied there. I was an attorney there for a little while. Didn't really enjoy law, and then ended up in Cape Town and spent 21 years with Old Mutual there. Met my wife at school in Port Elizabeth. So in 2019, in fact, in 2018, I had a back operation. And while I was recuperating for the 6 weeks at home, I was doing a lot of research as to what's happening in Europe and overseas. And at that time, my oldest son, Kyle, was actually dating a very good tennis player who was going to go to America on a scholarship. My wife came home one day and I said to her, do you know how long the flight is from Dublin to New York? And she said, no. I said, it's like 6 hours or something. I said, I never really, because you don't look at the map sort of that way. You look at you don't see how close America is to Ireland. And she said, why do you ask? I said, well, if he follows her to America, which was his plan at that point, I said, if we stayed up north, it would actually be a very short flight to America. And then I started exploring Ireland, and we actually all had Irish passports through my wife. So I've had Irish passport for about 20 years, and our kids were born with Irish passports as well. So we came to have a look, and we ended up here in 2019, in March 2019. I came up to Dublin.
Wow, okay. I was going to ask, I always ask the question, the particular reason for the location where you are, but obviously driven by the Irish passports, that makes a whole lot of sense. But then 2019, so you spent 2020 basically COVID time in Ireland. Is that right? You left South Africa?
Yes, I guess lucky to arrive before COVID.
Okay. And at that time, when you arrived in Ireland, did you arrive with work or did you set up your own business at that time?
So I was with Old Mutual at the time that we decided to move to Ireland. And so I resigned from Old Mutual and then started looking for a job and found one a little bit earlier than I thought I would actually. So I arrived in the 1st of May. It was the 1st of May, 2019. Yeah, so I started a new role here in a law search firm on the Liffey River. So I was walking up and down the river every day, which was quite nice. But I stayed on my own for about 5 months before my youngest son started school in Ireland. He had 4 years left. He was at Saks. So I flew down to fetch him, brought him back up. And then my wife was selling the house and my oldest son was finishing school, matric at Saks as well. So when they were all done, end of the year, they moved up and we bought a house towards the end of 2019, just before COVID, yeah. And and that's how we got to Ireland.
Okay, but you also spent in that first bit of the COVID indoors at home and lockdown, because I know, when my daughter literally left the week of COVID, she arrived in Ireland to start her job and she had to work from home. It was quite a challenging time, and her husband took time before he could leave Cape Town and join us. So I kind of have a feeling I know what it was about. It must have been quite difficult from a social perspective because we're not allowed to see people.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was quite hard. We were quite lucky. We got a puppy on St. Patrick's Day, just as sort of COVID hit, and so it was quite nice to have to be indoors, but you've got a puppy to keep you company and to to play with in terms of the family. So so anybody that got an animal just before COVID, unbeknowing that COVID was going to happen, we're probably in a slightly advantageous position.
Okay, cool. And just a quick question about Ireland. I mean, obviously you like living there. What do you like most and what do you like least about Ireland?
I love the fresh air. I love the nature. I love it being so close to and part of Europe, accessible. Ryanair is like something like the 5th biggest airline in the world by by number of flights and number of planes, in fact. I love the safety. I love the education. Yeah, actually, very good quality. Anything. I've done a lot of courses. Yeah, I did my CFP here and all sorts of things. And very education systems run well. What do I like least? I think probably a bit of the monotony. You know, as a South African, I think we celebrate diversity and difference and different things to eat and different people to talk to. And, you know, everything's sort of very similar in Ireland. So that's the one thing I say I'd miss the most.
Okay. And from just a healthcare perspective, very good healthcare?
Yes, very good healthcare. You know, not really a big difference between private and public hospitals like there would be in South Africa. Excellent healthcare. You do have to wait a little bit long sometimes, you know, so the system is under pressure in terms of access. So quite important actually to have medical insurance, or what we call in South Africa medical aid, because then at least you don't wait as long as those that don't have. So yeah, but very good healthcare.
Okay, cool. Let's get into a bit of the meat of immigration. Do you, as a person who's immigrated and been living abroad for 6 years, do you think South Africans in general may sometimes underestimate the challenges of immigration?
Yes, I think definitely so. And that's in part why I started the company called HowzitExpats. Just in your question to answer and to tell you a little bit about why the name HowzitExpats. So Howzit, as we all know, is like, you know, a way of saying hello, but actually it does have a much deeper meaning. You know, how is it going? Actually, are you okay? How are you doing? Are you okay? And so I chose that as the name, not just because we all know it, but because the focus of HowzitExpats is actually on the well-being of expats. So to your question, yes, a lot of people do arrive. If you read Facebook sites, and you can see people didn't prepare well or didn't think through things or are surprised or unexpected things.
Okay, because, I mean, that was the other obvious question is, you know, there are lots of challenges. And I think you being a financial advisor, my sense is that, you know, people who are wealthy in South Africa, relatively wealthy, I think it's a very relative concept in South Africa, but sometimes also underestimate what it costs to live abroad, apart from all the other challenges. And I guess that's part of, with your background as a financial advisor, that you help people with as well.
Yes, definitely. So, you know, the slogan of HowzitExpats is actually, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I also chose that because you don't wake up in the morning and just decide you're going to emigrate. I don't think anybody does that. Maybe there are very few that do that, but generally it's a process and there's planning involved, and you can actually plan well and avoid a few traps and surprises. However, you know, when you get to the other side, you don't always know what to expect. So yeah, very important to plan. And on the finance side, you know, I mean, in terms of expense that you mentioned, so Ireland is rated as one of the most expensive countries in Europe, actually, in terms of expensing. But when you take salaries into account, then it isn't one of the most expensive cities because salaries are relatively higher than the rest of Europe. So, you know, if you're a couple here, if you joint salaries, then you can actually, you know, if you find reasonable accommodation, that's the main expense here, and it's quite scarce to rent or buy. You can find that you can, you know, live reasonably comfortably, but it is an expensive country. For those coming on holiday, as an example, if you're going to eat out and you feel like a steak here, it's chalk and cheese. You're not going to, number one, you're not going to get the same quality as in South Africa. So nothing against the Irish, but the South African food is definitely better all round, I'd say. And that's a lot cheaper in restaurants, you know.
Absolutely. I always think about this question. There's a lot of people who just want to get out, but it's a bad decision for them. And, you know, that's just my sense, is that some people at the point where they are, they shouldn't be leaving, but yet they do. And then they find it's very difficult. And, you know, it's such a huge decision. So when they leave and it doesn't work out, it just puts them back so far. And I mean, that comes back to your point of you know, fail to plan is plan to fail. But really, that is the issue. Is it's maybe not for everybody. Do you find that in your interactions with people on your website and through your webinars and so on? We'll get to that now.
Yes, 100%. So, you know, I think people need to accept that it's not going to succeed for every person. That is absolutely true. It's intriguing as to why that might be. And in fact, it's up on the screen at the back here. I know the listeners can't see it, but I'm just have a little logo of the survey and the well-being barometer that we brought out this year. You might ask questions about that later, but that's a part that really, you got to think about. So yes, in short, it's not for everybody. Motivations for leaving are different. Personalities are different. Family situations are different. Is it push? Is it pull? All those kind of things.
Absolutely. I mean, it just, I've spoken to psychologists and people, and it comes out in every discussion. People say that you mustn't think that immigration is going to fix a bad relationship. In fact, it's going to make it 10 times worse. And yet people think that change may help it for them. So if we get into HowzitExpats, I mean, we talked about the well-being monitor and the survey, and I'd love to talk to you about that a little bit. But can you just maybe give us a broad-based background of what the website, and you've got websites in different locations for people who don't know, maybe just talk us through a little bit about the whole concept of HowzitExpats and what you're trying to get done with it.
Yeah, so the main website that we have is HowzitExpats.com. So we say that's our global website. The vision of that portal is to facilitate planning of anybody leaving South Africa who wants to go and work or live overseas. So we have 3 phases in that website, from planning and we call it a wannabe expat, once you've landed wherever you are, and then for those that also end up going home. So that's the vision. So it's to facilitate planning, getting information, and actually probably ensuring that you are not leaving sort of stones unturned, that you're covering all your bases and that you've got no surprises. So that's really the essence. And then you mentioned the country website. So, I mean, assuming somebody's done their planning and, and then arrives in their country, the focus really does shift away from planning as such or being ready to actually then being an expat, integrating as an expat, realizing you're not in South Africa paying, 150 Rand for a hamburger in the restaurant. You are somewhere else now. And the menu also looks different because you're somewhere else. And the people talk differently and everything's different. So it then shifts, Jan, very much to community. So our tagline for our community websites, so we started with Ireland because I'm in Ireland. So how's it Ireland? .ie is our website for the community in Ireland, and the tagline there is building stronger communities. We launched a few months later in the UK, so howzitunitedkingdom.co.uk, and then also recently in Australia, howzitaustralia.com.au. So all those websites are community focused. What is different in that country, specifically in that country versus South Africa? What is and where is the community? Where are the events? What do they do here in this country? So we're really trying to enable South Africans to quickly fit in and slot into the community.
Okay. And, one of the comments that came up the other day was if you're planning to immigrate, and if you can, it would be a good idea to go and visit the country, go and spend the money. But it almost sounds to me like what HowzitExpats is doing is possibly taking away some of that cost of actually going there by explaining what people can expect, or am I wrong in that respect? Because it is expensive to just go look-see. You're talking for 50,000 Rand to go to Ireland. You're not going to spend a lot of time in Ireland for 50 Rand. And for people thinking about immigrating, every penny counts. So that just, it's taking out that surprise that's waiting on the other side. It sounds to me like that's part of what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly. So we would foster, some of the things practically as an example. Nothing stops. And in fact, I did this when I moved in 19. I had somebody at work at Old Mutual where I worked, whose brother lived and lives in Ireland, and had 2 sessions with him to ask a whole lot of questions around schools and properties and shopping and prices and just everything. And like even something basic like that helps tremendously because it helps you to prepare, ticks things off the list. I would encourage people to visit the country ideally before they go there. I'd say especially now, I've only lived in Ireland and in South Africa, but I could imagine countries where there isn't much English as an example, or the culture is very, very different to ours. I'd say especially there, maybe go and have a look first, because you might be in for a shock.
Absolutely. That kind of leads me to the next question, because within your expats, the different communities and websites, you also do webinars. What can a participant in a webinar typically expect from those webinars?
Yeah, so Jan, we've started with what we call community webinars. So for Ireland, our How's It Island community, we've in fact had 4 as of today, the last 4 months. We have 1 a month. We've had 3 in the UK and we've had 1 in Australia. So the agenda of those were put together with the following in mind. Basically, when you arrive in Ireland, let's say, there are things that are very different across various different subjects and themes. So we've got 3 main themes that we cover in every webinar, in our community webinars. The first one is financial well-being, and we focus on financial related topics that we think you as a South African living in Ireland should be aware of, should know what is different in that area, if it's tax or pensions or whatever it might be. And there we have presenters from in-country, from Ireland in this case, and South Africa, and we cover financial topics. So that's the first one. The second one is we have topics related to well-being, mental well-being. So we have a life coach who comes on. Colleen Quist is doing those sessions for us. And then we have top tax tips, a local tax person. And then we also have a slot called Ubuntu, which is around then the social integration and well-being aspect. And that's, in fact, in Ireland, we have a very nice speaker there, Garvin Rush, who's the MD of Dublin Walking Tours. And he tells us about the history of the Irish, and what's different about the Irish and South Africans. And, he's come along to a boerewors tasting one evening as an example to learn more about the South African culture so that he's more equipped to tell us about, how we should be sensitized around fitting into Ireland. So it's very much a bit of a variety show, Jan. We've got little 60-second slots where we showcase businesses and events. We have business owners coming on for 60 seconds, quickly telling us what they do. We have a lucky draw. We have sponsors. It's meant to be a fun, relaxed, sit back and just enjoy it. But we're relatively new. We've had 4 in Ireland now, 3 in the UK. And they're all pre-recorded now. We used to have them live, but it was quite difficult with the vast number of speakers we have on, and also time differences. So we'll drop them every month in all our communities.
Wow, I think that's fantastic, because we'll want to get to this community aspect. Maybe just one thing to highlight, or question that I have, is that obviously we all save during our career for one day. We always save for one day. And what seems to happen when people emigrate is they cash in their savings because they have to go and restart in another country. I mean, that's really hard when you've worked for 10 years, you cashed in your pension. Now that you find that pension, you can't even buy a house in Dublin. It's really not a lot of money. And then you have to restart. And then when it doesn't work, to go back is almost impossible. So, I mean, that seems to be such a big theme around immigration, this whole financial aspect and just being prepared for what you can expect and budgeting. Sorry, I'm harping on this whole planning thing, but it seems to me like that is such a critical thing.
Absolutely. The finances, if the financial well-being component is said to be generally the most weighted towards our overall holistic well-being. If you're really struggling financially, it drags the rest of your well-being components down with it. So absolutely, when you move overseas, it's one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your life, apart probably from who you marry or the house you buy or having kids and stuff like that. It's a really big decision. And the financial aspect is significant. We talk about the pensions that you have. What do you do with that? Do you keep it in South Africa? Do you cash it in? Can you cash it in? Can you take it? When can you take it? Do you pay tax? Where do you pay tax? And because the regimes are so different, in fact, that's one of the key reasons that I decided to be a financial advisor in Ireland. I used to work for the Bank of Ireland and a big insurance company, and I left that, is to help people actually understand the differences so that they have a trusted voice. Because if you talk to somebody in South Africa, they don't know much about Ireland. You talk to somebody in Ireland, they don't know much about South Africa. So you do need to try and find somebody who understands a bit of both sides of the fence.
Cool. No, I think that's fantastic. And I think you're doing great to help people in that process. As you said, for those who can't see, behind Lumondt, he's got a well-being barometer with a South African flag in it. I know you've embarked on this program, this project, to do a survey of South Africans abroad. You want to maybe just give us a bit of the background? I'm not sure if you've got anything, broad results that you can share yet?
Maybe just to start with where the idea came from. It's a bit of an interesting story. So I've never been a Facebook person all my life. My wife sort of used to relay the Facebook stories, what's happening with our friends. I was more on LinkedIn and that, and I wanted to do a Facebook survey on finances about a year ago, and then approached one of the Facebook groups here in Ireland, and they wouldn't let me in. They said I came from a fraudulent Facebook account, and I said to my wife, "Why is that?" She said, "It's probably because you've got 16 friends." So I quickly accepted all my friends on Facebook, and then got to actually do the survey. It was short 10 questions, and I wanted to check the sort of, with hindsight, did somebody feel that they should have planned better? Did they make mistakes, have any regrets, etc.? So I did that survey, eventually got it done. And then I started reading what people do and say and what happens in Facebook, because I was totally naive. I didn't know. And there are many groups in Ireland, as there are like in UK. There'd be lots of South African Facebook groups and I read the comments and the questions, and month after month, I was sort of surveilling this. And I was actually quite shocked, Jan, to be honest, because I saw how many comments there were, and they normally posted anonymously, around people being very unhappy, really struggling with different facets. And then obviously a lot of support trying to come in. But I looked at the support and the questions and the answers and responses and thought, I don't think that's really helping. It doesn't feel like it's helping, because it happens year after year, month after month, and I'm not generalizing. And so the well-being component for me has stood out like a sore thumb. And obviously I have friends too. And even within our own family, we've had challenges around how we settled in Ireland, all of us, I've got 2 sons and a wife. So I'm intrigued. I'm absolutely intrigued by what sits behind the drivers of a successful immigration from a well-being perspective versus an unsuccessful one. And that's where the well-being barometer came from and was born. And I decided to start it with a survey, and actually then to do an annual survey. So this is the first one. It's brand new. It's out in the market at the moment. It's been about 4 or 5 weeks that it started. It'll close relatively soon, but we don't have any results yet. We only have the numbers of people taking part. So I'm working very hard to send it far and wide. And to anybody listening, if you haven't yet done it, you can have a look at my LinkedIn or HowzitExpats Facebook. It's all over the place. But it's a survey that covers wannabe expats. So we're trying to also uncover the motivations for people that are leaving South Africa. What sits behind that? Why are they going? And then, of course, existing expats, and then those that returned as well. What sits behind that? Are they happier after they returned? What do they feel like? So yeah, generally the responses have been very positive in terms of people being, I think, curious as to what's going to come out of it. And I'm most excited about it being an annual survey and an annual barometer where we can actually start to track what is changing. I think that will help us to inform actions and advice to people.
I think that's an excellent initiative. I think I may have told you in our initial discussions that it's kind of part of the reason why I started the podcast, because I felt that people don't put their names, as you say. They'll say something negative anonymously, but when you get the people to actually talk to you and tell a story, you get a different feel. And I think it's going to be a very, very interesting survey. And my sense is that the 2 things that people that I've spoken to, we're now on episode 35, and the thing that comes out in every conversation is family and community. It's just the biggest miss. People talk about difficulty or weather, but family and community. And there's not one shoe that fits everyone, but people really, really miss that. My sense also is that that's the reason why South Africans form close communities in the countries where they live. Do you have that same feeling?
Yes, you do get. I mean, when I arrived in 2019, I did meet a few South Africans who are now my friends, who I could see their sense was they first want to make sure they integrate locally before they spend a lot of time with South Africans. But then the flip side of that is there are people that really need more South Africans closer to them. They need more braais. They need more, familiar accents. So it is a mixed bag, but absolutely. I mean, if I take myself, so I'm part of a golf group, which helped me a lot. And this is not, it started out actually as a South African golf group called Swingbox, 4 of us. And then we had an opportunity to integrate and not take over, but restart a stagnant golf society in a pub in Delgany called the Horse and Hound, which is actually managed by a South African there, Kevin Moose. And now that society is about 55 strong. It's probably about 80% Irish, 20% South Africans. And if I look back on my 6 years, I'd say that's, for me personally, that's been an amazing part of my integration into Ireland, because I have golfing friends who are Irish. We play, we all banter. I mean, we have a lot of fun when we're playing rugby against each other. There's a lot of, upmanship, etc. But yeah, you've got to get involved in your community, but within the Irish community as well.
Yeah. In 2 weeks' time, you're going to have some really interesting banter again when the Boks are in Dublin. Yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating. Also, this thing about should you just have South African friends? I think it varies from community to community as well, And not every South African you meet is going to be your mate. That's the other thing I've found. We're just different, but people tend to maybe be a little bit more tolerant because they're also South Africans. But after a while, it will fizzle out if they're not soulmates. So yeah, that's an interesting one. But the other question is around this whole thing of South Africans forming stronger communities. It seems to be happening, and maybe it has been happening. I've only been overseas 5 years, but it's that, people are realizing that they're there for the long haul. They're not going to go back. And South Africans are diligent, they work hard, and they make things work. And I'm almost getting the sense that, and that's the next question, the lack of network is people are realizing, that we've got something to offer, so let's get together and make it work. Is that what's behind the lack of network? I know you've also joined that.
Yes, I joined recently. I was in South Africa almost 2 months now and went to see some of the people. I was following it very closely from the sides. I was interested in these new things. And no, it's actually as somebody working for myself and not being in the corporate world anymore, I think the added advantages of joining a network just generally, never mind the lack of network, because you've now got more people that you know and you're seeing more activity and information and learning things. But certainly I think what stands out on the lack of network side specifically is, I'd say, the energy that it brings to everyone who's part of it. You can choose to sit back on the sides and do less and be less involved, of course, but I think there's rejuvenation here, and it's, as you say, Jan, it's uncovering that sort of South African spirit and helping each other. In fact, one of their slogans is, "How can I help you?" So, no, I'm really enjoying it. I'm a strong advocate of the Laka network, especially for myself as well. But, I want to try and see what can I give to the others in the network. Is there something that I help them with? That's also my role. But, no, I'd encourage people to join.
Yeah, it's maybe we often talk about our unique sense of humor and the way we look at life because of the way we grew up and, the challenges in South Africa. So maybe it's difficult for us sometimes to assimilate into an Irish network or a Portuguese network or another network because we know how other South Africans tend to work, so maybe that's part of it. But I think these are just wonderful initiatives, and I've spoken to a number of people. I think Kirsten, who started Emigrate to USA, and there's more and more of these initiatives popping up everywhere. And as we go along and we talk to people around the world, I've got an interview on Monday with somebody in Dubai who's doing something similar, So it's actually fascinating to see this all getting together and people starting to make life better because, if you've decided to stay, we may as well just make it work. And that's my sense.
Exactly. No, definitely. No, the South African spirit is infectious. And I think we enjoy being with each other and doing things,
Yeah, absolutely. And Lumondt, if you meet somebody now in your network and in these discussions and surveys and so on, people who may be really unhappy, what would you advise them? Because you do get that situation where somebody, all he wants to do is go back because he thinks it's better. But what would your advice be to somebody like that?
That's a very good question. It's a very important question. So, I'd answer it by saying, so if I look at the Facebook questions and comments I've read, and there are many of them. In fact, I've joined many, many Facebook groups just the last 2 weeks to get permission to post my survey so people can do the survey. And if I read through them as well, I think people who are unhappy often reach out to see whether they can get comfort through as somebody else been in a similar position. That's often I see happening. Am I the only one experiencing this? And I think reaching out is exactly the right thing to do. You've got to talk and get involved with discussions with people who've been in similar positions. So talking to people maybe that have had those struggles, really a good idea. Whether one person has the answers for somebody, I think, Jan, everybody's story and path is different. Every path is, your family is different, your finances are different, your work, so your age is different, your goals are different, your motivations are different. So there isn't just really a one size fits all. I'd say if the right reason for you in terms of happiness is you want to be back in Bloemfontein, playing golf on Saturday morning with your mates, then you got to seriously consider that. We do have one life. And I like to think also, we're in an era where we can contact each other. We didn't have WhatsApp 25 years ago. You couldn't FaceTime your grandchildren. You can fly relatively easily. Yes, it's just the cost of a ticket and stuff. So you can have a concerted effort in terms of staying in touch, I think, as well, on the flip side of things. But these things do cost money and stuff. So it's not just, you can't just, wave a magic wand and you're back in Cape Town. So, but I think talking to people, in fact, I think one of the actions coming out of the survey is going to be, so in my view, there is a lot more that can be done and that should be done to support expats in the different phases of their journey. And I think through that support, a lot will stay longer or will be happier, or yes, we'll still go back to South Africa. It's not a right or a wrong. It's more around the well-being, and that's why our slogan is, we don't want you just to survive. We want you really to thrive as an expat. That's why HowzitExpats exists. So it's a tough one, but you've got to get involved, got to talk. I don't think logging something on Facebook, by the way, in my opinion, actually is that helpful, generally. I've looked through a few years' comments on a lot of sites, and generally it doesn't seem to be an effective mechanism. So in my mind, I'm thinking, what are those alternatives? So you've asked a very pertinent question, which hopefully the survey will help us answer in part.
Okay, great. Because, we often speak about how big a decision it is to immigrate, but the decision to go back is as big, if not bigger, because, I think I might mention that Paul Harris said in his interview some months ago that going back or immigrating takes 5 years out of your life if it doesn't work out, and it's 5 years of savings and 5 years of career, and it's lots. So I often think a mindset thing is also important. If you're going, make sure that you have the right reasons, that you've done your planning, but that you also are not going to say, well, if it doesn't work out, I'm going back. It's got to be really bad before you make that call. And I think it's, again, not one formula for everyone, but these are big, big life decisions that can cost you in the long run. If you, again, talking on the same terms, is there one thing that you wish you knew when you left South Africa that would have made your journey easier, maybe with hindsight, or are you quite happy with your decision?
That's a good question. So, I did a lot of planning. I'm generally a planner myself. So I like to, I'm not up to the nth degree, but I like to do my homework and read widely and look left, look right, pros and cons, and consider it. So I'm also a bit of an adventurer, my personality. So I'm willing to take chances and try things. I love Europe. That's why part of why I like Ireland. I love Europe. I love the old buildings. I love the culture and the language and the food. I just love it. But, in terms of, so I made some mistakes as well arriving here. I'll tell the listeners maybe one of them. So there's so much to do and think about. And especially in my case, I came on my own, and then my son came, and then my family came later. So you've got this staggered, and a lot of people do that. In fact, I've got some clients that's happening to right now because of visas and all sorts of things. That makes it a lot harder. But, in that kind of environment, one makes decisions maybe that you shouldn't. So in my case, I went and bought a brand new car, as an example. I bought a brand new car because I didn't want to have any issues with the car. And in my previous life, I had 2 car duds that cost me a lot of money. And I didn't want that in Ireland. I didn't, but if somebody just said to me, Lumondt, do you know that they roadworthy every car in Ireland every 2 years? Therefore, even if you buy an old car, it's not going to be as bad as an old car in South Africa, right? So take 50% of the money you spent, even more actually, and just buy a decent second-hand car, save all that money. So I wish somebody gave me that advice when I moved. So it's those little technicalities which, because of how stressful it can be and pressurized, all the decisions you're going to make, you might end up just making the wrong decisions. Talking to somebody about all these things. In fact, the clients that I meet are often, when I talk to them about cars, I tell them this because they say, do I need a car? I'm in this town, how are the buses, what the transport routes like? I said, well, you don't really need them, but if you get one, don't have to spend too much, right?
That's very interesting because I know because my kid's there, but apparently the cars, they always travel with their full insurance history as well. That's attached to their registration. So if a car was in an accident, you will know it if you buy it secondhand. I think, is that correct?
Yeah, no, the history, yes. The data is very good actually on cars. You can see what happened. And no, it's chalk and cheese compared to South Africa. I mean, I think I've seen one actually. In the 6.5 years I've been here, I've seen one car with smoke coming out of its exhaust.
Oh.
Like, bad smoke. I mean, you just drive up the West Coast and every third bucky will have quite a bit of smoke probably coming out of it. You don't get that.
The other anecdotal story that I always like talking about is, in South Africa, the postkantoor no longer exists, the post office. So you could never send anything by post. I know in Ireland, certainly in Portugal as well, everything arrived by post, even your driver's license and documentation and important stuff. So it takes a while for people to get used to trusting the postman and Amazon and deliveries, because these things just happen on time and they'll leave it in front of your door because nobody's going to steal it. So, yeah.
Just a funny story maybe on Outsurance, just to share with the listeners about post. Chatted to them a while back and they had to send something by post, and it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. And the next day, the item was in my post box. So, yes, definitely very different to our post experiences in South Africa.
Yeah, no, it's these are things the good things to get used to that you're not used to from South Africa. I think we're getting kind of towards the end of the discussion, Lumond. A last thought to leave with our listeners. I think a lot of our listeners are still in South Africa, but also a lot are spread around the world. If you have one final thought for the listeners, what would that be?
I'd say, Jan, in terms of immigration and well-being, I'd say, map your decision out, map your planning out with everybody in mind. So if you're a family, we're all different ages, different journeys. I'd say spend a little bit more time prepping around that and seeing, is everybody on the same page? What does this decision mean for us all, etc. So, yeah, I think more time could be spent generally, I think, on that, especially in families. If you're on your own coming across, it's a different ballgame. If you're just a couple, it's a different ballgame. If you're in a family with kids, especially if they're older, like mine were teenagers, and I'd say that's a lot harder than, bringing across kids that are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Maybe if, again, for the listeners, if you want to follow or contact Lumondt, his website is www.HowzitExpats.com. He's also on LinkedIn as Lumond Kritzinger. I don't know if there's any other contact details that you want to share, maybe, Lumond?
We just have quite a vibrant Facebook page as well, actually, HowzitExpats Facebook page. We have competitions all the time and all sorts of things happening. So, yeah, that's a bit of fun activity.
Okay, excellent. So go to Facebook and the HowzitExpats page. Join that as well. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your journey and that of HowzitExpats. I think it's an awesome initiative. I really wish you well, and I thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jan. It's been great. Thanks for having me. All the best. Cheers, everyone.
If you enjoyed my discussion with Lumondt and would like to hear more about experiences of South Africans who have left South Africa, why not subscribe on your favorite platform? If you'd like to share your own story, contact me on jan@therelocatedSouthAfrican.com. Until next time.